Good evening and welcome along to another episode of the Blues Brothers podcast, the Alternative Rangers podcast. The Dens Park Choir were silenced by Danny Rule's rampant Rangers. The Gers made it 3 league victories in a row and managed to achieve what our very own Lana Wolf couldn't, and that's a clean sheet. But whilst progress has been made in the league, the Premier Sports Cup was a disappointing semi, something that I'm very familiar with. And as for Europe, who's responsible for such a drop-off this season? 4 games in, and Neil Poix, we are the Eurovision British entry in the Europa League this season. Much work in January is needed to enable us to be back on song. Joining me to discuss all things Rangers is my very good friend, Mr. Ross Clark. Ross, how are we, mate?
Very good, mate. Very good to be back with you, Davie, after missing last week and after a hectic week. Back for Paris on Wednesday, Aldous' birthday on Saturday, Christmas tree up on Sunday. So this is me giving Cola props for getting the tree up here with this change in camera angle, Davie. How are you?
I'm good, mate. You're looking resplendent in your RFC-inspired Disneyland gear there, mate. It's looking the part. But I don't know, mate. I suppose that's an interesting question to start at, Ross, because it's been a rough couple of weeks in terms of the football, and I guess a bad result in the Premier Sports Cup semi, and then obviously a disappointing result against Roma, but then a good first half performance against Dundee, and it's probably a good place to start. Danny Rule has had 3 league games so far. He's got a 100% win record. I think we've seen a return to pragmatism for a Rangers manager, which is a bit positive, but I don't know where I'm convinced, because there's moments in games where we look really good and there's things working, but then there is an obvious drop-off, and that drop-off at the minute seems to be for the start of the second half onwards, and I don't know whether it's we can't get the substitutions right, mate, or we just don't have the personnel there, and that's something that we will come to later in the podcast. But what did you make of the victory, Dundee? Obviously, a 3-0 victory, and elements of the first half, as I've already expressed, were good. But how was the whole 90 minutes as far as you were concerned, Ross?
Well, we never got that second gear, did we? I thought it was convincing. Nice to see Rangers actually going and killing a tie off early, Davie, innit? Too often we've scored one over the past 2 or 3 seasons, scored 1 goal and then retreated and tried to sit on that. So it was positive to see us quickly gone after a second, and then the changes at half time. I've been watching a lot of podcasts where folk are maybe a bit down on that and thought that for me, Danny Rule is still trying to get to grips with his squad, what players can do, what they can't do, and 2-0 up at half time, I think he tried to give Chumity and Asgard minutes and also the potential of going and getting another couple of goals between them. That never quite panned out, to be honest. I thought we looked a bit not shaky. I don't think we were ever in danger, Davie, but definitely there was a significant drop-off. But on your initial point, when was the last time we had a consecutive run of games where we looked strong for 90 minutes? You're probably going back to Gerrard's term, where it seems to be a thing with us, whereby we either start a game well or pull it back in the second half. But the full 90-minute performance can't be far away. But it was definitely good to get an early couple of goals at the weekend and have the game kind of sewn up by half time and then be able to make those kind of substitutions, I thought.
So let's get the positives out the way first, because I feel like a lot of Rangers podcasts this season have been doom and gloom, and obviously we can only talk about what's been in front of us. The switch for Mikey Moore, where he started the season as a winger under Russell Martin, and now he seems to be playing more like a 10 or just off the striker. Is that getting the best out of the boy? Do we think that he stepped up a few gears since he's been in that position? And does he look like a dangerous talent going forward for us between now and the remainder of the season, Ross?
I think we brought him in as a winger and Russell Martin tried to use him as such, because we've probably got too many people that want to play in the 10. The issue we've got as well being that we don't have anybody to play on the right-hand side, so I think that he was being used there to allow Asgard in. I definitely think that the wee guy is good enough on the ball, Davie. He creates space. You've seen it the weekend. He's quite intricate in his link-up play with people. And if he's... I've kind of said on here before, I feel as if when he's one-on-one with a big hairy arse right back or a left back for the SPFL that just want to put him up in the air, I feel as if he gets out muscled. Whereas when he's in the hole and he's in the space, I feel as if he's got that area where he can glide between players and he can latch on to other players rather than being one-on-one with somebody who's maybe physically a bit bigger and stronger than him at this stage in his development. What I would say is, since Danny Rule came in, and fair play to Danny Rule for it, he has given him more of a kind of free role. Harking back to, do you remember the season, and we've spoke about it on here before, where you had Kent, who started off out wide but played quite a lot in the 10, and he would pop up on both sides of the park. And I think in this league and in this country, having a kind of maverick, if you've got the correct midfield set up behind them and you can allow somebody just to go and play in the spaces, then I think that will bear fruits for us, Davie. What's your thoughts on it? Because I know that we were very critical of him before Will.
I think you made an interesting point in regards to how you thought he was running with the ball, like a ball carrier. I felt his runs with the ball and off the ball were both penetrating in terms of they were causing danger. They had the opposition worried. It also freed up players for us in and around the box. And we'll come to that later, because I think there's a formula missing somewhere in terms of the blend up front right now. It's not quite right, but we're talking about him in terms of middle to front going forward. I think he looks lively. He looks like, you know, you made a point on here at the start of the season in terms of opposition aren't they really scared of us. I think he's a player that could make opposition defenders worried about him. He is that sort of, as you say, a maverick type, you know. I'm not saying he's anywhere near like a Gascoigne type, but it is on that mould of a player, you know, a young Lampard coming through, that type of, you know, throwback midfielder, like a young Michael Ballack. And again, I'm not comparing anybody to those players I mentioned, but it is that type of player. And I think that's missing in the modern day, because as we saw, especially with Rangers this season, we've had a lot of side-to-side passing for the sake of football, whereas this boy wants to get involved in a dangerous position and, you know, look to poke the opposition, for a better phrase, and prod them in the hope that it gets us something rewarding at the end of it. And I think it's good to see. I like the fact, as you said, that Rules recognised that the player has attributes there that are of benefit to the team being used in a better position. And I just hope going forward we can see that through the rest of the squad. But I touched on there, Ross, the blend up front. He made changes at half-time again in terms of the striker's position. Obviously, he's floating with Miovski and Danilo to start the game. And again, he makes this change at half-time and we bring Asgard and Chimiti on. I want to come back to Asgard later, but in terms of up front, Ross, if we continue to play this 3-4-3 or variations on that formation, 3-4-1-2, for instance, what is the right blend now? Because Danilo had a couple of games when he was getting... But again, I don't know if there's a striker there now that is the right fit for how this manager maybe wants to play, or is the right fit in terms of it's going to post the numbers that we need for a Rangers striker. Do you go along with that?
I do. Unfortunately for us, of that too, Danilo's the best at the link-up and he's also the best at the finishing. So he can't play the two positions at once. I was thinking when you were talking, just to harp back to the previous point we were talking about, the young boy Moore, it reminds me a bit of Phil Foden when he came through. That sort of get on the ball, looks dangerous, glides by people, but also does the dirty work as well. He gets tore in a wee bit, and we've seen even as recently as Alex Lowry coming through our own youth, who was good on the ball and could go by players, but didn't want to do the hard yards, Davie. And I think that's the difference as well. If you've got somebody in, it's all right saying you've got a free roll going that way, but you need to work your arse off coming this way as well. And on the strikers, I hate to harp back. I hate to harp back to it, Davie, but for me, if you give Shankland the 3 chances Chermiti's got in the Old Firm game, he buries 2 of them. So we need somebody in that mould to play off Danilo. I think we need a goal scorer, just a proven, somebody that, you don't want to harp back to Dessers, but somebody that's going to put the ball in the net 25 times a season for you. I don't think Chermiti offers us that yet. As I've said on here before, I'm encouraged, and I know a lot of people are, but I'm encouraged by the way he takes the ball in sometimes, and I think that there will be a player in there, but I don't think it's. I don't think you're going to see a return on that investment in the next season. Put it that way, like what you got with Egerman and Miovski. As I say, I hate to say I told you so, but he just never looked like a Rangers striker to me, based on the way.
What type of player is he, Ross? What type of player is he?
He's well, before he had 2 years of no playing much on the clock, for me he was hit the ball over the top and let him run on, which is why he had all his success against Rangers and Celtic, and how people were pining to sign him. But I don't think he's ever been renowned for playing with his back to goal and linking people in, or playing against a packed defence where there's nobody that you can't really run in behind. And that was always my worry about signing him. The boy can finish, but how many chances is he going to create for himself in this Rangers team? I don't know. What I would say is 2 years no race, I would say, compared to his Aberdeen games, to the player we seem to have on our hands now, Davie.
No, I think that's a fair comment. That's something I wanted to touch on because, as you say, most teams that when we play against them, 9 times out of 10, there's more men behind the ball than there is in front of it. So in terms of stretching opposition, there's going to be limited chances available for a Rangers striker to do that. However, when he's had the chance, as you're saying, the guy's towing a caravan. He has lost more than a yard of pace, and I just don't see what he's offering, as I'm sure many Rangers fans are at the moment. And it's that blend at the minute. We currently have 3 strikers that have cost us the best part of 20 million, and none of them are the striker that Rangers need. So, again, we'll probably touch on who that falls to and who's responsible for that. But in terms of the players they know, is there anything the manager can do to tweak it in order to get them in the game? Or does he almost have to try and work with them on the grass, mate, in the hope that something comes off? Or is it just as simple that for somebody like Miovski, all he needs is a goal to get that confidence lift?
Well, we said that, didn't we? And then he scored a goal, and then he's been back to honking. Then you've got Chermiti, who I thought, all right, he scored for his country, albeit at under 21 level. Then he's came to us the next week and scored, and you hope that would give him a lift. And then he doesn't help himself with a celebration, which gets folk back on his back again. Regardless of who it was aimed at, obviously fans have decided it was aimed at them. So I thought it was interesting, mate. I listened to the reviewers, and somebody on that was commenting to Derek Clark, what's gas am I doing? It's giving the fans it. And I'm like, no, that's just his celebration. Like, players celebrate by covering their ears. Players, I don't know. I've never seen Chermiti score enough to know if that's part of his celebration. I don't know, because I don't think you guys scored enough. I think that was possibly the first goal that's ever been captured on camera that he scored. But when it comes to strikers, mate, I would honestly, I would give my left arm for a Tony Goals to come back. See, like a Cholak, somebody that's going to get 2 chances and score 2 goals. I know that everybody gets a bit annoyed when I talk about Lawrence, but somebody in that mould that you can get them the ball, and if the ball drops at them in the box, they're going to be dangerous. No matter if it's left foot, right foot, half volley. I another issue we've got is those £20 million worth of strikers that you speak about, Davie, and you're right when you add up the Danilo £6.5 million, 8 to 10 for Chermiti. The other issue we've got is that none of them have played a consecutive run of games or had a 20-goal season in the last 2 years. That in itself is an issue as well for me. I don't even know. January's a notoriously bad window, innit? So where do you go and get a striker that guarantees you goals in the second half of the season? And the worry, and you've alluded to the fact that we're going to come on to him, so I take it we're going to be talking Thelwell later on, so that would be enough to put the lights in the Christmas tree out talking about him again. But you know where he's going to go looking for a striker? He's going to go looking at the bottom of the English Premiership for a striker that's not playing the now, who's not scored a goal for 18 months, that we're going to bring up here and try and nurse him back to health, which is a sad indication of where we are, mate. Is it that we seem to, ever since Beale and probably before it, we want to go to the English market and get people that are struggling and try and nurse them back to form, and time after time it's come back to bite us in the arse, but we still continue to do it. I don't know, Davie, what your thoughts are on strikers, but I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that I go, aye, that's the person I want us to sign in January. You're on mute.
Schoolboy error, mate. No, in terms of...
I
know, mate. The first time I've ever done it as well, so it's true what they're all saying is. But what I was trying to get at is, you make a fair point, but the summer was the obvious market, I felt. You know, if you were trying to do business in terms of, you know, you had the view as a club that you were wanting to sell Igaman and Dessers for whatever fees that you were expected to get. You could have got a guy in or a Bosman and strengthened other areas of the team, but we've not done that. As you say at the minute, there isn't an obvious striker. But do you know what a sad indictment is? And I'll probably get laughed out of the face of it. And by no means am I suggesting Rangers should target these players. But what I'm saying is, Rangers would probably get more out a Simon Murray and a Brian Graham up front than the three that they've spent 20 million on. And that really, for me, is a sad indictment of where we are as a club, because we don't have that type of striker, as you say, that can play with their back to goal, that can link play comfortably, you know, that can buy you, you know, 3 or 4 minutes when you hit it long. It gives you team breathing space when you're under pressure in games. That's why we're getting thumped in Europe now, because we don't have Morelos of old. When we're under pressure in games, we're constantly under pressure. We've not got a breather. The ball's no sticking when it's up front. So Roma, obviously, last Thursday took the foot off the gas when they were 2-0 up. But there was a 10-15 minute spell where we were just under siege and couldn't get out. And I think our European results speak of where we are this season. And I think a lot of that is down to, yes, the defence is an absolute bin fire, but we don't have a focal point up front. We don't have another option. We've got 3 guys there and the blend isn't quite right, but none of them are offering us that out ball that we really need. And none of them are offering us, you know, regular goals. And I think none of them are offering us what we need for a Rangers striker at the end of the day. And I think that falls on recruitment, obviously, but I'm hoping that the manager can get us by until January. But it's definitely an area of the team now, mate, that looks sort of out of sync.
What would you give for a Ryan Kent back as well? But see somebody like that who can take the ball and run 50 yards and get you up the park. Like, as much as Gassama looks really, really good in the final third, but we don't have a ball carrier. And I hope that Asgard was going to be that guy that could take the ball in the halfway line and get by players and get us up the park and hold on to the ball. We don't seem to have that. I feel as if every time one of our players gets isolated one-on-one with a fullback or gets onto the last line of defenders, I feel as if we just give the ball away. As you say, Chermiti he's a big fit. Well, on a spreadsheet on Kevin Felwell's Excel book, he's a big, powerful, physical guy, but he just seems to get ragdolled every time the ball goes up. So I think that, as you say, right across the front three, we don't have somebody that's putting the ball in the net. We don't have somebody that, as you you put it a bit more eloquently than me. I would call it somebody with a big fat arse like Morelos that would just back into people and the ball stuck. Iggerman gave us that kind of option as well. We's build and the wee stocky, so low centre of gravity. But by that I don't mean like a big. I'm not talking about a Kevin Kyle up front. I think of like John McGinn and players like that have just got that low centre of gravity, dig the legs in, and nobody's coming round them without fouling them. So I think right across the front three, none of them, and I include Gassama in that, are really helping us when we're on the clock as an outball. I don't feel as if we've got an outball at the moment.
No, you mentioned a player there, Ross, that I want to talk about, and that is Tello Asgard. Now, his red card, rightly so, in my opinion, in terms of the cup semi, but he was used as like one of the first substitutes on Sunday, and I kind of felt he sold the jerseys for me against Celtic because the red card cost us. I get we won in the first half, but you've got a better chance with 11 men, and you know, the sort of nonchalant flick over the top and the casual sort, and that is the right word to describe him. He is very casual on and off the ball for me. And that is a worry and a major concern of mine. I don't see a Rangers player there. I think your eyes don't lie to you. I don't think he has the attributes that I'm looking for an attacking midfielder. He doesn't offer enough in terms of effort for me, but creativity as well. On the ball, does he really play any penetrating passes or patterns of play? I think it's a major worry of mine that he's been brought in as part of a major summer recruitment, and we've got to sort of almost find a way into the team for him. But ultimately, Ross, I think after 4 or 5 months, you can see it for yourself. He's no good enough for Rangers, is he?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know, Davie. I think that there's definitely a player in there. Based on watching the YouTube reels that will make anybody look good and some of his previous goals and performances, there's definitely a player in there. But as we know, the Rangers shirt is heavy, and when you're coming for, was it Luton we signed him for? Luton. When you're coming for Luton to Rangers, that is a major adaptation, and the expectations, the size of the stadiums. Luton are playing in like junior parks. Do you know what I mean? The amount of fans, the lifestyle, being in control of games, having to affect it rather than being a maverick who's maybe doing one thing and that's the best thing your team does in a game, being expected to do that 10, 12, 15, 20 times a game. It reminds me of Joe Aribo in that I think his mannerisms and the way he conducts himself and the way he moves about the park, he looks more lackadaisical than he is. Alberts is probably right. I don't think he's anywhere near as good a player as Todd Cantwell. Can I say that? I think he's one that could come good, Davie. But again, and it's the theme of our summer transfer window, for me to see Iggerman, a project player who's coming through that we maybe couldn't have afforded to get next year, so we've went and got him. The difference being we've spent 8 million, whereas Iggerman cost us 1.5. Asgard cost us 3.5 million. Aribo cost us a couple of $100,000 compensation. So these players are coming in with what I would class, and I'm sure what you would class, and I'm sure everybody who's in the stream watching now. By the way, over 100 people watching live, Davie, which is uncharted waters for us. So I thank each and every person that's taking an hour out your night to sit with us, and feel free to get involved in the comments and tell us how much rubbish we talk. But I think that's the major issue we've got here. 3.5 million quid's a lot of money for Rangers, and you look at some of the project players we've signed over the last couple of seasons, your Jeffties, your Iggermans, they got a bit of time. But Ingerman still wasn't playing games at this time last season. He was just breaking into the team. But when you sign somebody for that elevated price tag, Scottish football Rangers mentality says, oh, we've spent 3.5 million. That's what we spent for a Davis. That's what we spent on. Do you know what I'm talking about? And I think that comes with an expectation. Now, there's two ways to look at that. And the one that I'm clinging on to is that our new American overlords are that loaded that they don't think 3.5 million quid's a lot of money. Listening to Stevie Clifford after the roundtable discussion they had, he seems to think that Andrew Kavanagh doesn't think that 8 million quid on Chamiti is a massive big deal. He's not expected to be a first choice. They're quite happy for him to learn and develop. And I'm like, 8 million quid's a lot of dough, but see if it isn't to them and they go and invest 8 million, but then you fall into financial fair play and sustainability and all that sort of stuff. So, mate, I suppose the next transfer window is when we'll see just how much of the budget we've blew on these players and how much of the spendable money that we've blew on these players. But I just don't know if we've invested wisely. For me, I don't think we have. You look at, again, I'm going to say it just for the last time, everybody at the back, say it with me, Lawrence Shankland on a free. And we've went and you're not going to tell me, and I was arguing with a boy in work about this the other day, you're not going to tell me that Miovski is offering us any more than Shankland would have. And somebody went, Shankland doesn't move, the ball just comes to him. And I went, he handballed it for his second goal against us, but see the touch, he bursts forward, he gets into the box and he makes a nice wee run in behind. We don't have anybody that's offering that now, Davie. We don't have any of our strikers, barring maybe Danilo, who have got that wee cute run off a defender and a first time finish on his left foot. Our 8 million quid players running through one-on-one and can't even hit the target. That's the difference.
No, I think it is an interesting point. And on that, as I say, we'll come back to the end of it, of, you know, the transfer fees and the players that you've mentioned. The one thing I'm looking at there in terms of strike rate, you've got to have one of them, two of them, three of them that are starters that have got to be a success. And the worry for me in terms of the outlay, the new, in terms of all our big hitters, in terms of incomings, we're not hitting a positive strike rate in terms of what they're offering the new. And I get we've had two different managers this season so far, so maybe you've got to err on the side of caution and the hope they come good. But we're now in November, Ross, and it's a worry to me that nothing's clicking in terms of these big signings, especially Asgard, because you could argue the fact that, yeah, Yanis Hadji last season had, you know, last season syndrome, as you've already called it on the podcast, right? But the way that boy was treated at the start of last season from the upper management at the club, he still contributed in terms of goals and assists. We're getting nothing in terms of that for Asgard now. And that, to me, is a massive worry in terms of a player of his alleged calibre, playing in the position that he's meant to be playing off, just off the front, the left-hand side. We're just not getting enough out of him, mate. And again, as much as we said about the striker, the midfield, the blend's not right, because you see, 1 week he's chasing it when he thinks we're not going to have the ball. He's starting Connor Barron beside Raskin, and Diamandi's dropping out, right? But the one constant that's usually there 9 times out of 10 is Asgard. And for me, I think we might be better with a midfield three of, you know, Raskin, Barron and Diamandi, but he's never opted for that.
Again, mate, I don't understand the clamour though now, where it's got to be Sunday, and Raskin. Is Raskin and his form potentially part of the problem? For me, Raskin has had one good game since he came back in, and was at Hibs in the Cup. Was his one decent performance. That was the weekend after I met him and had words with him, and he bucked his socks. He pulled his socks up for 1 week, mate. He bucked his ideas up for a week, and then he's went back down. So we'll need to see if we can get that famous crooner Lewis Capaldi back in town, so I can have words with him again. Mate, for me, Conor Barron, again, somebody who we picked up as a free, paid a compensation for, is probably been our best performing midfielder since Danny Rule came in. Listen, I've been shouting Conor Barron's praises since before he signed for Rangers as a potential Ryan Jack replacement. I like the fact Rules obviously sees a bit of something in him and he keeps going, keeps persisting with him. I think that, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, have you got it marked down in your wee black book?
Yeah.
Hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. And I think that at the moment you're seeing the hard working endeavour of Conor Barron outshining players who have got superior technical ability than him, based on the fact that Conor Barron is giving it his all in that position. The blend isn't right. But, and I'm harking back, I'm going to give credit again to Stevie Clifford. You can tell I've been watching other podcasts this week. He broke it down on his own pod and on the Rangers Review. And you look at our midfield. We've went for Steve Davis, Kamara to Lundstrom. Lundstrom wasn't good enough, and we've replaced him with Rothwell. We went Goldson. He's over the hill. We'll upgrade him proper. He's absolute guff. We need to replace him. And we've now went to Giga, and Suter's still there. We went from Cholak, no good enough, to then Morelos, who obviously was up there. Last season, you'll need to remind me who played up front for us last season. Dessers, that's the very guy. So you've went Morelos to no good, leaving in his last season terrible, to Dessers. Then you've went Dessers, no good enough, need better, and went to what we've got now. So recruitment since we won the league we've not improved any position. In fact, what we've done is replace players with players that weren't good enough. And then when we've went to replace the ones that weren't good enough, we've stepped back again. So, mate, the full place needs a clear out. And what we're also doing is this time is the amount of money we're spending is going up the way. So, long story short, mate, in the midfield, the blend isn't right. But again, we've got talented players in there, but I think the endeavour of Raskin, and for me as well, when Diamande plays, all Diamande's done for the last 6 weeks is go late into tackles and just barge people and give away free kicks. He does it. He looks at the sorts as well. Danny Rule coming back and saying that Lyle Cameron's fit, he just can't make a squad. Doesn't make any sense to me. Arguably, in the opening couple of games of the season, he was probably our best player playing in the midfield. Surprised a few folk, the boy Cameron. So I think there's a bit of tinkering going on with Danny Rule. I think he's trying to find his best way about, and until such times as he picks players based on their effort and their endeavour, as opposed to he is the most talented, even if he's not working hard, then I think we'll continue to have issues in certain games.
There's another player I want to talk about, Ross, and we spoke about him on a podcast previously, but I want to do a sort of deeper dive into, if you will. And our good mate, the ghost for podcast past, Mr. JD, me and him were having a wee conversation about it in regards to John Suter. Now, JD made a great point, I think, and this is the point I want to touch on, where he says,
JD doesn't make good points. JD doesn't make good points.
He said he thought last week watching the Roma game that up until the mistake he made, John Suter was having a good game, and then he makes a mistake that costs you a goal. Now, I think there's several examples of the mistakes that John Suter's cost us in games that have led to goals, where he's probably been having a good game up until that point. And I remember when he was playing left side, it used to be like the ball coming over the top, and at set pieces he was getting caught out under the ball, and he was having a good game, but the argument was he was playing out of position. We need to allow him that. But last week, it's a lapse in concentration. Now, what is that? Is that that he just has a lack of quality, and if you keep peppering him, then you will eventually get the chance? Or is it desire, mate, because he, as you've already alluded to, last season contract syndrome? Is he ultimately good enough, I'm asking you, as a Rangers player? Because I personally don't think he's a Rangers starter in any Rangers team, you know, to win a championship. If that's what the benchmark is, John Souttar falls below that for me. I know you've seen him up close and personal at his time at Hearts and that got him the move to Rangers. But I think if you're at a club for 3 seasons, and when I say a club, I mean Rangers, and you haven't won a title, I think that's a telling sign in terms of a player that they're not good enough, mate. I think 3 seasons and move them on. Where'd you go with that?
I think John Souttar is suffering heavily from last season syndrome, whereby he's made a plexiglass anyway, isn't he? So he's no. Where do we go with John Souttar, Davie? I like him, right? I'm going to put that out there. I like him, but he's a siege defender. It's why he looks good against teams. But having spoken to my old boy the other day, who I was actually discussing John Souttar with, he says, see, when you've got a siege defender, how many the Callum McGregor's goal in the Old Firm game is another example. How many shots this season has he threw himself in front of and it takes a wee nick off him and ends up in the back of the net? On the ball.
See there, Ross, see just on that one, do you think he's ducking out the way yet?
Aye. I think personally Butland would say he should have done better as well, but I don't really. I managed to avoid talking about that game.
We'll come to him.
Nah, I don't want to talk about that game. I was in Paris. Me and Mickey Mouse were hanging out. Mate, Souttar isn't the gauge I would give you for Souttar was Connor Goldson and Leon Balogun were deemed no good enough. If they two signed for Rangers in January, both of them would play ahead of John Souttar based on ability and merit, in my opinion. So that tells me that John Souttar's not good enough, because I don't think they were good enough either. But harking back to your man, Thelwell, we're in up shit creek without a paddle, because we need 6 or 7 defenders, because as it comes next season, when the season kicks off, we've got Fernandez and Dujon Sterling. That's our only contracted defenders. So we're not in a good position at the back at all. We're not in a good position whatsoever when it comes to defenders. But for me, John Souttar maybe needs to cut the firing line. And he's another one, Davie, that you could put the same logic to, whereby it is Souttar and Giga, Souttar and Fernandez, Souttar and Cornelius. Why no Cornelius and Giga? Why no Fernandez, Giga, Cornelius? Why is Souttar the one constant there, even though he's underperforming? And I think that's the same when it comes to the kind of Raskin. I think that right now it's as if he's got to be the stalwart in the team, and it doesn't help a centre half either when you've got a different partnership and you've got a flaky midfield in front of you. I don't think the whole spine of the team is helping anybody, to be honest.
Well, this is an interesting point, and I know our good friend for Podcast Pass, Stu, is in the comments there, and I kind of want to touch on that because Stu's here. You know, he's a massive Jack Butland fan, and I don't think Jack Butland's without his critics. He has started the season well, and we've discussed, we think that maybe because we've been more under pressure this season, he has performed, but he's ultimately still made mistakes. And I put Butland in the same bracket as Souttar. See if you take Tav as the sort of linchpin here in terms of how many years do you go of repetitive failure when these senior guys in the dressing room get chance and chance again and they fail? They've all had 3 or more seasons now at trying to do it, and we're failing every time. At one point, you need to look at these senior players and saying, right, yous have had a chance yet. We need to try and move yous on now, because I don't think that you can maybe try and bring in a couple of players here or there it ultimately doesn't work because they're all sort of burdened by that repetitive failure. There, Butland last week again in an Old Firm game doesn't make what you perceive to be a simple save to keep you in the game when it matters. And yes, he did make excellent saves in the game, but he didn't make the one that matters. And for me, a Rangers goalkeeper, years gone by, your McGregor, your Kloss, your Gorham are the keepers that make the save when it matters. And I think it's a mentality issue, Ross. And I think all these guys, your Tav, your Butland, your Suter, and we'll come to Tav because I think he has played well at times this season as well. He was our best player in the Cup semi without a doubt. But they are all under the same bracket that time and time again they have a go at this and they fail, and we can't keep going with the same guys and it not working.
I think you're right, but I think that the issue is that you can't replace them. We brought Aarons in to replace Tav, and he can't get in the team. By all accounts, it looks as if they were trying to sign a goalie in the summer and couldn't get it over the line. Butland is the best you've got, mate. You know yourself, I like a bit of Butland bashing, right? Because I don't think he is as good as our fans would like to believe he is. But on this season's form, I struggle to criticise him too much. I get what you're saying. It's another cup game. It's another Old Firm game where you've got back in the game and he's had one. You look at the cup final with the Ida goal, just shots right at him. But mate, this season as an ex, not the best goalkeeper in the world, but as somebody who's played the position and had moments like Butland's had, I'm just glad that who did they have the stinker against? He had a stinker against somebody and he saved the penalty the next game. We were talking about it on here. Who did they have a stinker? Somebody help me out here. Somebody help me out. He had an absolute
Kilmarnock, was it no? Was it Kilmarnock? The 3-1 game? Did he not sell the first goal? Or he came for the cross and missed it?
Came for the cross and missed it. That's the one. And previously, I would have worried, and I think I mentioned it on here, that Butland makes a mistake and it goes on for games and games after it, whereby this season he had that mistake, the boys got him out of jail, he goes to Hibs, makes a great penalty save, and then he's been good. He's probably been more than good this season, Davie, for me, so I don't want to stick the boot into one person who's been good, but the Old Firm game, when you get it back to one each and you're trying to hold on for penalties, which is where you would have expected him to excel, he loses track of the ball in the air and you concede. So I don't want to be too critical on him, because I would hasten to add up until now he's been our player of the season. But
we both said that last week. So I think that's fair comment for balance.
In those big moments, I just find that sometimes that's probably why he's not playing top 6, top 8 in England, because he's got the ability to play, but he's maybe not got the consistency and the high pressure moments, and it's the big, valuable mistakes that you so rightly talk about. Goalkeepers are never rewarded for, you can make 6 worldies in a game, but see if you let one through your legs or you drop one in front of a striker and they score, they'll talk about the saves because that's what you're there for, but you're not there to make mistakes. And I think that sometimes I hold him to that standard a bit too much. So on this occasion, I'm going to lay off him, Davie, for once.
No, that's fair enough, and let's hope we don't have to revisit that on the podcast going forward, mate.
What I will say, Davie, on the Butland, and I'll say it again, is I think for the way we want to play football with a high press, you need a goalie who's going to play further out than Butland's comfortable playing. And I think in the long run, I don't think you'll fix that in January. I don't think you'll go and sign a goalie in January, because all the good ones will cost you a lot of money. But looking towards next summer, it wouldn't surprise me if we potentially went for is it Shea Charles, the boy for Chef Wed that we were linked with. I don't know if maybe he would suit Danny Rule's form of pressing and approach just by playing that wee bit further out his box.
You make an interesting point, and I kind of want to make a footballing point on that. See that type of goalkeeper that plays that sort of sweeper keeper role, and is that or Butland's inability to perform that role, is that why we get caught out with the ball over the top so often? As much as our centre halves lack that recovery pace, is the goalkeeper, play a part in that sort of system in terms of when you concede that goal as often as we have this season? Does changing the type of goalkeeper you have improve that situation?
Well, I only ever played at junior level, right? So I don't know how much I say I've got on this. What do I know that Jack Butland doesn't? Probably nothing. But for me, if you're playing, take for example Hibs, we're trying to play a high line and they've got Martin Boyle up front. So see the ball over the top, it's on all game. See if Jack Butland is standing 10 yards outside his box, just filling that space. Now, a guy at 6'5", you wouldn't expect to be getting lobbed for a halfway line, right? And the type of ball they're playing, they're hitting it for deep and just shelling it into channels. For me, if you've got a goalie who's comfortable playing out with his box, they just come out. How many times do you see it? Ederson, Alisson, goalies like that. And am I saying we can go and sign a 60 or an 80 million pound goalie? No. But somebody who's comfortable just coming out, and see if other Dennis come out and shelling it and just putting it out for a shy. It totally, see when Hibs have played that ball 2 or 3 times and the goalies cut it out 2 or 3 times, they then need to change tack. And it's not a tack that teams, after a few weeks of Rangers playing that way, teams maybe don't see that ball through the middle as a weakness. And I also think that helps out the likes of your John Souttar in that, because they know that they can. I don't know if you've noticed it, but for me, John Souttar's always 3 or 4 yards deeper than Giga or Cornelius, whoever it is. And I think that is a fear of a lack of pace because the ball going through. So for me, there's a big issue there that could potentially be fixed by playing a goalie who naturally plays as a progressive kind of sweeper keeper if you're a football manager kid, or just essentially plays a bit of a higher line. If you've got your team and you're playing a higher line and you're pressing onto the halfway line, but your goalie's standing 12 yards out, then that gives kind of 60 yards for the ball to be played into, whereby it's a foot race then with a goalie and a centre forward. Whereas if your goalie's further up the park, they're playing into a space that's maybe 30 yards. Do you know what I mean? So there's less chance of them just knocking it on and allowing a striker to run through. That's just my opinion based on what I've seen. And by the way, I agree with Andrew. I do think we need to cut him some slack this year because he has been a hell of a lot better. And as I say, my biggest fear was he makes one mistake, he goes on a run at him, and he's no. Mm-hmm. So credit to his mentality for that, and potentially credit to Sal Bibble, the new goalie coach, because maybe that's something he's really worked with him and instilled into him.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned a coach there in terms of Sal Bibble. I want to talk about the manager because in terms of a running fixture since he's come in, he's not had much time on the grass. But if you look at the 6 fixtures that he's been in charge of, right, in 3 of them we've lost a set-piece goal for a corner, Kilmarnock, Celtic and Roma. Now, it was a common theme under our last 3 or 4 managers in terms of us conceding set-piece goals. Almost every manager post-Gerrard. Now, is it the fact that we go the mix of, this sort of hybrid mix where you've got zonals and man marking, so you've got certain guys attacking the spaces and then certain guys going to the man? I don't think we get the blend right in terms of man marking either, because we seem to allow the opposition big guys to attack the ball, and we've got our biggest defenders attacking spaces where sometimes the danger isn't there. Do you know what I mean? Because the opposition move round about that zonal block, as it's called, and we're all still standing static, and I think that is a main reason why we are losing so many goals. But it's been a common theme post Gerrard, Ross. Van Bronckhorst never dealt with it, Beale never dealt with it, Clement never dealt with it, Russell Martin certainly didn't deal with it, Rolls probably no had time to deal with it, but it is a major issue. It's a cancer within this team. It's killed us so many times over the last few years. And hopefully he gets the chance to rot it out. But how do you rot it out? Is it the blending players that's not there? Does it just need time on the grass? Or is it that zonal marking is just no the answer in Scottish football?
So from this, mate, I can hark back to my playing days when I was playing with Yoker. John Brogan, who used to play up front for St Johnstone, credited with making Ali McCoist the striker he is, was our manager. And no matter what I wanted as a goalkeeper, he would always have our shortest man defending the back post, stay on the post, because as a striker, he knows that's where the danger is, at the back post. His instructions to me were, see if the ball drops in at the front post, you're running 6 yards to get the flight of the ball. As a goalie, I would expect you to come and take it. If the ball goes over your head and you're backpedaling, I want somebody on the back post. Now, you hark back to Steven Gerrard days. How many times did Steve Davis on the back post get something that was goal bound for a corner? So for me, that's the first thing, is especially when Butland maybe isn't as dominant with crosses as you would like, is getting somebody on that back post. And I think that helps us. But I'm a big believer in match up, man for man, height for height. If they put their centre halves up, your centre halves go and mark them, and everybody's responsible for their man. There's no grey area. And see if you're marking me and I score the goal, then by right, it's your fault because you were marking that man. Whereas once you start going to this kind of hybrid mix where it doesn't matter who goes into that front post zone, that's Raskin's zone. So if a 6'4" forward or defender is running into that zone, he's running for the penalty spot. He's got to run, and Raskin's at a standing jump in that area. Yeah, obviously Raskin's not going to win it, and you see it the other end of the park. When Raskin, who's one of the smallest guys on the park, because he's got that wee 5-yard dash to get to where the ball's going, a running jump will beat a standing jump 9 times out of 10, Davie. So for me, I would like it to be a case of man for man, mark up. I know that it's maybe no, and again, harking back to the football manager type coaches and those who have been on SFA badges for under 6 and under 7 training, who'll tell you that no, zonal's the way to go. And for me, especially when you're defending the way we're defending, give everybody a bit of responsibility. Match up with a guy, go height for height, and you go and win your ball. If you're no winning it, make sure he doesn't. And that to me is a surefire way of at least sorting it short term until you can work on what you want to do long term.
No, I think that is fair comment, Ross. Now, I want to touch on one of the comments that your man Big Phil raises here. Now, obviously, Hearts dropped a couple of points at the weekend. We've now went 3 back-to-back league victories in a row. We've got a couple of what you would maybe hope to be easier games post-international break to kick us off in the run straight through, I think, until March before the next international break after that. So we us out of 2 competitions already this season, because let's face it, I think that to try and qualify for the playoff round of the Europa League is almost impossible at this point. So the league is, we're pretty much, playing with 2 arms behind our backs, let's face it, if we're expecting anything for there this season. But is it salvageable, Ross, as it sits at the minute? Do you see hope now at the end of the tunnel in terms of that we can claw a gap back on Celtic and Hearts in the race for top spot?
So, I do. I think that it's all there for us. You're talking a poor Celtic team. Hearts, the new high flying. You look at their best players, Davie, and I'm possibly being presumptuous here, but the boy Kizaridis and the boy Braga, who have come from Portugal, Greece, how are they going to cope? -6 going away to Falkirk, places like that. So we've went and bought players from the English league that are used to the British weather, but I don't know whether these players that have been brought in, as exciting as they are, does 5'8" Claudio Braga how does he react to getting booted all about Livingston at the Tony Macaroni or whatever they're calling it this season when it's -6 and the rain's coming down sideways? So I think I learned a lot last year with Aberdeen in that, see, when you're on a good run of form, you're on a good run of form, but there's 4 points we've gained on Hearts this week, and you've still to go into a tough winter. And then after New Year, as you say, we are not going to be playing European football, which is a brand new concept to Rangers. I think consistently since Gerrard came in, we've been in the latter stages of Europe after Christmas. So I think that frees up a bit of time. Right now, I think that Danny Rowell's get 2 weeks on the park to instill some of his methods. Now, as we've spoke about on here before, that was what killed Russell Martin for me. I was still on the Russell Martin electric milk float, making absolutely no carbon emissions or that to go with a vegan lifestyle. But I expected him to change things, and we came back and get scudded 2.5 Hearts at home. So I'm hoping that in the 2 weeks or the 10 days, whatever it is, that the international break lasts, I'm hoping to see us coming back and look a bit better again. And you're not going to get a better chance. Celtic have started off the season pretty badly. For me, they are at their worst without Cameron Carter-Vickers in their backline. I think the boy Scales is a bomb scare, Ralston, bomb scare, and I think that they're there to be got at, not just by us, but by the rest of the league. And I know that people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, so please don't by any manner of means think I'm saying we're great and Celtic are. That's two poor teams, but you're within 5 points of them now. You're within touching distance, and I think as a Rangers fan, you've got to be excited by the prospect that under this new manager, there seems to be a bit of rapport building between the supporters. And you're on a knife edge when it comes to January. Do we go and improve the squad? Do we go and sign better players? And do we make a real fist of it? Or do we go back into Kevin Thelwell's little black book and go and sign overpriced duds going into the back end of the season? So hopefully Danny Rowell's got some players that he can bring to the forefront and that he's maybe picked up and knows will fit his system. But I think if you take Hearts out the equation, which I know sounds crazy because they are so far ahead of us, but history tells you that the chances are it'll be Rangers or Celtic that win the league. And if Hearts were out the equation and you were 5 points behind this Celtic team, based on how bad we were for the opening 3 months of the season, then for me, it's all to play for, Davie.
So you touch on an interesting point, and you gave me a nice segue. We've probably spoke about recruitment on and off on this podcast, but it's probably a good place to end tonight's show in terms of, I'm going to put you in Kevin Thelwell's position, not necessarily in his shoes, mate. So if you are the Rangers sporting director and you're in charge of recruitment, if we're to make a push towards climbing the table and hopefully getting there as quick as possible, what do we prioritise in the January window? Because normally, if you go by Rangers history over the last 4 or 5 seasons, the most players I think we've ever signed in one January window, I think the max was 3, going back to Gerrard times. So if you're saying the most that we can get out this window is 3 players, in what positions would you prioritise going into the window? And do you think this window should be used as well to try and get some of what we already perceive as the early deadwood out the door if we can? Or do we try and bring them on in the hope that they turn good in the second half of the season?
Well, it's an interesting one because it depends what offers you've got. If you could sign a striker who's going to give you goals and somebody take Chermiti on a 6-month loan where he can go and get games and kind of build confidence, would you take it? Of course you would take it. For me, we need a left back. Left back is a burning priority for me because the boy Magoma, as good as he's been, as good as he's been at points, I don't think that he's going to continue that throughout the season at that level. And you're already seeing it as peaks and troughs. He's a 19-year-old kid playing his first full season. We definitely need probably two centre halves, two solid centre half options. We need somebody that's going to put the ball in the net, because at the end of the day, goals are going to win your games at the end of the day. I don't think we've got enough of a threat up there. But January window, there's a reason why we've not signed a lot of players in January, and it's because the best players at teams are, you're paying the January window premium, Davie. So I'd be interested to get your take on this. But for me, I would sign two centre halves and a striker. But then I feel as if I'm neglecting the centre mid, because I think a real good number 6 in there to go and allow the other two to play would really help us as well. Joe Rothwell's no been what we thought we were getting in that position, and I hope that for the next two weeks, mate, Joe Rothwell is tied to some sort of fitness device that just works him. I hope he's powering the whole Alkin Howie in a wee hamster wheel, mate, just running. Because a fit and firing Joe Rothwell, as we've seen last year, and all the, again, back to the YouTube clips you've seen of him, he's a good player, mate, and we've just no seen the best of him at all. Whether that was Russell Martin never gave him a good pre-season, whether he's maybe carried an injury coming up here, whether he's got Joey Barton syndrome and he's come up here and thought he was going to just stroll about with a cigar in and the slippers on, whatever it is, it's not happened, and he needs a reset. So 3 players is impossible, mate. We really need to sign a good handful. I'd be looking to sign half a dozen players, but I don't know if the logistics are possible. I don't know what's your wish list for January.
No, absolutely. I think we need a left back. You know, I would prefer 2 centre backs, but I think we'll probably keep it at 1, because I think they'll use the fact that Cornelius can maybe play that dual position and use that going forward. I think we need a striker, somebody that can put the ball in the net. And do you know what I genuinely think we need? I know you're saying a 6 or whatever, but see the type of midfield player that I think Rangers have been missing. And I go back to it, you think of a younger version of Steve Davis, a sort of mid to late 20s Barry Ferguson, a Pedro Mendes when he could play here, somebody that can play that killer pass forward. Like, we lack that creative type that can just, you know, is almost like scanning the pitch at all costs, is just waiting to receive the ball and then ping it, and automatically you turn defence for attack instantly and you're in on goal. We really have never got that type of player. And Gerrard's midfielders were type, as in they were all grafters, and Davis sort of played that 6. But you're going back so many years now to see that type of player in a Rangers jersey. And I think that's why the balance, as we spoke about earlier on, the cohesion in the midfield seems off, because, you know, I think there's nobody there that can really get us in games and penetrating teams, unless it's sort of Mikey Moore now in that position, breaking for deep. But there's nobody really there that can slip him the ball. I don't think Raskin's that type of player. I think Barron's the type that wins the ball back, but he's not necessarily great on the ball. So maybe a creative midfield type is somebody that I would be looking for, Ross. Do you think there's scope to get that sort of player in a Danny Rule Rangers? And will the manager's maybe relationship with a guy like Hansi Flick, the fact that he's such good pals with him, maybe allude to the fact that young guys might come on loan for Barca?
It's back to that old cliche again, but innit, if you get young guys for Barca, they're going to be used to playing Spanish football, where it's a bit of time on the ball and you can go and influence games, whereas they're going to be coming up here and have Alex Gogic booting fuck at them, which is it's not great for anybody's development. I think the issue you've got, Davey, is seeing that creative midfield role. That's what Diamandi's supposed to be for me. That's what Asgard's meant to be. We got rid of Hadji, we got rid of Cantwell. We've had that kind of player and bombed them out. So I just don't know where. I don't know where we go. I definitely think we need something different in there. But I just don't know whether you get two that can play, two that can do the graft in the battle, the likes of your Baron-esque type, and go and let I know I said Foden. We're going to let your Mikey Moore be that guy up there that will take the ball in and find passes and stuff. For me, that could be the answer.
No, I think that's a fair comment. So we'll leave recruitment there until after we come back for the pod post the international break. I think you're down south next week, Ross, so am I. So we'll probably come back in 2 weeks and have the audience, hopefully, wanting more by the time we're due back on here. But until then, here's Buffalo Albert's question that I want to pose to you just before you go. Where do you stand on the manager giving it the Danny Rule roar to the Union Bears and the travelling away support, mate? Do you like it? Where do you stand for it? Or is it a bit tin pot considering where we are now this season? Do we need to take into account that it's a foreign manager, different cultures? This is very big in German football, and as long as it's sort of bridging that gap between the fan base and the club, then you don't necessarily mind it.
See, you've stitched me up here, mate, because you know my opinion on it. yeah, mate, how to put it? It's not for me, mate, that we slagged Ronnie Dyler for doing it in a winning Celtic team that were doing well. It's not for me, not at this stage. I think I would be disingenuous if I said that I didn't think he was being a bit pick-me at the moment. See what maybe Lassie will come in and she'll go, her in the school's a wee pick-me, just want all the boys to like them, and that's what he's coming at. He's trying too hard for me now. It's very much like Kyogo picking up the litter on his way off the park and all that sort of stuff. For me, just for me, mate, win games, do what you're doing, but I don't think we need to be going to that extreme. Once we start winning stuff, 100%. But I get it, the culture and the environment in Germany, and their coaches are all into it, all the kind of European coaches and stuff. I get what he's trying to do. He's trying to bring the fans on a journey with the players. But for me, as I say, where's Brown Brogues, mate? Like, it's just he's trying too hard for me to try and get the fans on side. And then I get it. The song he's named it's the Stoles Anders chant as well, mate. Hearts fans used to sing Zander Clark last year as well, so it's a bit. But the new chant, I don't know if you've caught 4Lads recently, but they've got a new boy on, Amrit, who is brilliant, by the way, very, very good podcaster. And he was on singing He's Got Us Playing Electric the other day, and it's catchy wee numbers in it. But for me, winning some games, win as a trophy, and then go and celebrate with the fans and stuff. But listen, it's just me. It's no for me at this stage after three what should be routine wins for any Rangers manager, mate, to be honest.
No, I guess, and Baz makes a fair point here, and it's better than, because I think the point Baz is making here is a pertinent one in terms of the disconnect between the club and the fan base when Russell Martin was in position to now. At least there is that eerie positivity going forward, and on the back of sort of, well, he's got 100% league record now, he can't go wrong. But I get what you're saying, the first defeat, then you don't do it, then it sort of sets the precedent and it breaks that rift. So it's peaks and troughs, mate, but we can only go forward.
What I would say, Davie, is the other manager had to go down the tunnel or he would have got lynch mobbed and battered in the middle of the park. So I suppose he's staying better than the previous manager. But as I say, for me, yeah, you've had some good wins. We're picking up. You've got the suit on. You're pandering enough with it. It's just a wee bit. That's exactly the word, balanced. You've done your bit. You've got the suit on. You're talking well. Rocking up Bickert Lures for the night before a game to go and put out bits of paper with the Union Bears for a display. As I say, it just reminds me of Kyogo picking up the litter and all that sort of stuff. Everybody love me. I don't get it. But as I say, I might just be a miserable old man, mate, because I'm getting to that age.
Well, on that note, Victor Meldrew, it's good night from him, and it's good night from me. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us on tonight's podcast. We'll be back after the international break. Take care of yourselves. Good night.